Welcome to this step-by-step guide on how to apply for a reasonable accommodation with the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority, or CMHA. If you or someone in your household has a disability and needs assistance to equally use and enjoy CMHA housing, programs, policies, or services, this video is for you. CMHA is committed to making its housing and programs fully accessible to people with disabilities. To support this effort, CMHA provides reasonable accommodations or reasonable modifications where doing so is necessary for a disabled individual to fully use and enjoy their home or participate in CMHA programs and services. First, let's define what a reasonable accommodation and a reasonable modification are. A reasonable accommodation is a change, exception, or adjustment to a rule, policy, practice, or service that may be necessary for a person with disabilities to have an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling, including public and common spaces. For example, moving a tenant to a unit that fits their accessibility needs. Under the Fair Housing Act, a reasonable modification is a structural change made to existing premises, occupied or to be occupied by a person with a disability, to allow full enjoyment of the premises. This can include changes to interiors and exteriors of dwellings, and to common and public use areas, such as an installation of a ramp into a building, lowering the entry threshold of a unit, or installation of grab bars in a bathroom. The housing provider must provide and pay for reasonable accommodations and modifications, unless these accommodations would result in an undue financial and administrative burden or a fundamental alteration of the program. Once you decide whether you need an accommodation or a modification, it's time to apply. To begin, you will complete the appropriate request form. If you are a Housing Choice Voucher Program applicant or participant, you will need to complete Form RA-1H. If you are a public housing applicant or resident, you will complete Form RA-1L. Let's walk through these forms together. Part 1 is for the requester. Complete this section if you are filling out the form on behalf of someone else. You will need to provide your name, relationship to the client, phone number, and email address. Part 2 is about the client, the person who needs the accommodation. You will provide their name, date of birth, and other contact information. Part 3 is where you describe the accommodation you are requesting and explain why it is necessary. Be as detailed as possible. Part 4 is optional. Complete this section only if you are working with an advocate who can assist CMHA with the request. Finally, Part 5 is where the requester signs and dates the form. It is very important to also complete the Authorization for Information form. For Housing Choice Voucher Program applicants or participants, this is Form RA-2H. For public housing applicants or residents, this is Form RA-2L. This form authorizes CMHA to verify the disability and its relationship to the requested accommodation. Now let's take a look at the Authorization for Information form. Part 1 of the Authorization for Information form is where you provide information about the verifier. This is a doctor, medical professional, peer support group, or other reliable third party who can verify the disability and its connection to the requested accommodation. Part 2 is where the client, or their authorized representative, authorizes the verifier to release information to CMHA. This allows CMHA to evaluate the existence of the disability and the need for the accommodation or modification. It is important to understand that this authorization does not allow CMHA to access the client's medical records, including diagnosis or test results. Once you have completed both the request for accommodation form and the authorization for information form, you can submit them to CMHA. You can submit these forms in person, by mail, or by email to the contact information listed on the form. After you submit your request, CMHA will review it. This process includes several steps. First, CMHA will verify the information you provided. This may involve contacting your verifier to confirm the disability and how the requested accommodation will help. Next, CMHA's Reasonable Accommodations Committee will evaluate your request. They will determine if there is a connection between the disability and the requested accommodation, and if granting the request would be an undue financial and administrative burden or a fundamental alteration of the program. Finally, CMHA will issue a determination letter explaining whether your request was approved or denied. If approved, CMHA will follow up with next steps. If denied, you have the right to appeal the decision. If you need assistance with the application process or have any further questions, please contact CMHA's Section 504 ADA Coordinator at 216-271-2996.